The smell of motor oil clung to the air like an unshakable memory inside Joe Hammond's small auto repair shop. The morning light streamed through the grimy windows, slicing through the haze of dust and exhaust. Joe had been at it since dawn, sleeves rolled, grease on his cheek, and the faint hum of an old blues song playing from a radio that never seemed to die. It was an ordinary Tuesday, the kind of day that didn't promise much, and Joe wasn't expecting anything extraordinary to happen. He had long stopped expecting much from life. At 48, Joe's hands bore the map of years, calloused, scarred, permanently smudged with oil no soap could erase. He'd inherited the garage from his father, who'd built it after returning from Vietnam. But times had changed, cars had changed, the neighborhood had changed. Most of Joe's regular customers had moved away, and what remained were broken cars owned by people who couldn't afford to fix them. Joe often did repairs at cost or on credit, sometimes not charging at all. His accountant hated that, but Joe couldn't help it. He knew what it meant to be stuck with nothing but hope and a busted engine. It was around 6:30 in the evening when the rumble of an SUV broke the quiet. Outside, the rain had started, soft and slow at first. The vehicle, a glossy black Cadillac Escalade, coasted to a stop by the shop entrance. The contrast was striking. This shining, luxurious car against the backdrop of Joe's aging garage with its peeling paint and flickering sign. A man stepped out first, tall, mid-40s, wearing an expensive coat and polished shoes that had never met a puddle until today. His wife followed, dressed elegantly, her hair immaculate even in the rain, and in the back seat, two children, a boy around 12 and a girl not older than 8, peered out with worry. The SUV's hood was open, steam rising into the damp air. "Evening," Joe greeted, wiping his hands on a rag. "Looks like she's overheating." "Yeah," the man replied, voice strained with frustration. "We were on our way back to the city when the temperature gauge went crazy. Pulled over before it blew." "Smart move," Joe said, motioning for the man to drive the car inside. "Let's take a look." The man hesitated. He glanced around the small garage, clearly uncertain if this rundown place could handle a car that cost more than Joe's entire property. But his wife gave him a nudge, desperation outweighing pride. Minutes later, Joe was under the hood, flashlight in hand, tracing wires and hoses. The radiator cap hissed angrily when he loosened it. "Cracked hose," Joe muttered. "Lucky you stopped when you did." The man sighed, pacing near the entrance. The woman tried to calm the children, but it was getting late, and the rain was pouring harder now. Joe could sense their anxiety, that particular city-bred impatience, the fear of being stuck in a part of town they'd normally just drive past. "I can fix it," Joe said finally, "but I'll need to patch it temporarily. Replacement part won't get here until tomorrow." "We can't wait until tomorrow," the man said sharply. "We have to be back tonight. My wife's mother is in the hospital." Joe looked up at him, his eyes softening. "I understand." He paused, thinking. "Let me try something." He rummaged through his drawers, pulling out a spare hose that didn't quite match but might do the job. He cut, fit, clamped, tightened. Hours passed. The kids dozed off in the back seat. The wife brought Joe a thermos of coffee from their car, the good kind that smelled like caramel and warmth. By the time Joe was done, it was almost 10 p.m. The rain had stopped, and the street was slick with reflections of neon lights. He tested the engine, wiped his hands, and nodded. "She'll hold long enough to get you home," Joe said. "Just take it easy on the freeway." The man's expression softened, his voice quieter now. "What do I owe you?" Joe hesitated, looking at the sleepy kids. "Call it nothing. Just glad I could help." "Nothing?" the man repeated, stunned. Joe shrugged. "Some things you don't charge for. You've got a family waiting on you. That's payment enough." The woman's eyes glistened. "Thank you," she whispered. "You don't know what this means to us." Joe smiled faintly. "Drive safe." And just like that, the Escalade disappeared into the night, its red taillights fading like a promise Joe didn't expect to be kept. Days turned into weeks. Life went on, slow, gritty, unremarkable. Business didn't pick up, and the rent on the garage was coming due. Joe's landlord, a slick businessman with no patience for sentiment, had already warned him. One more late payment, and he'd lose the place. But Joe kept showing up every morning. He worked on old cars, fixed what he could, gave discounts where he shouldn't. His neighbor, a diner owner named Brenda, often brought him free pie, apple, sometimes cherry, because she said kind souls shouldn't go hungry. Still, the weight of bills pressed on him like an old familiar ache. Then one Thursday afternoon, when the sky burned gold and orange, Joe heard the low purr of an engine unlike any he'd heard before. He looked up and froze. A silver Bentley rolled into the lot, gleaming like liquid light. He squinted, wiping his hands. Out stepped the same man, impeccably dressed, though this time his eyes carried something different. Not pride, not condescension, something softer. "Mr. Hammond?" the man asked. Joe nodded slowly. "Yeah, we met the other night. Cadillac?" The man smiled faintly. "Yes, my name's Richard Cole." He extended a hand. "I've been looking for you." Joe hesitated, wiping his palm before shaking. "Everything okay with the car?" "More than okay," Richard said. "It got us home safe. You saved my family." Joe nodded, still wary. "Glad to hear it." Richard glanced around the shop, his expression tightening at the worn tools, the rusted lifts, the faded photos on the wall. One of Joe's late father in uniform. "You've been here a long time?" "Since I was 19, Joe said. "This place is kind of my life." Richard nodded thoughtfully. "Can we talk?" They sat in Joe's small office, a space that smelled of gasoline and old coffee. Richard set a small envelope on the desk. Joe frowned. "What's this?" "It's not payment," Richard said quickly. "It's something I want to do. I own a small automotive supply company. We work with garages across the state. I've been thinking a lot about that night, about how you didn't owe us anything, and yet you helped. No questions, no hesitation." He paused, his voice softening. "That kind of decency, it's rare." Joe looked down at the envelope but didn't open it. "I don't do what I do for payback," he said quietly. "I know," Richard replied. "That's exactly why I'm here." He took a deep breath. "I wanted you to know what your kindness did. My wife's mother passed away 2 days after we got home. Those hours mattered, Joe. You gave my kids a chance to say goodbye. You gave my wife closure. You gave me something money can't buy. Time." Joe's chest tightened. "I'm sorry for your loss." Richard nodded, eyes glassy. "Thank you, but I'm grateful, truly." He stood, pressing the envelope gently toward Joe. "What's inside isn't charity, it's an invitation." Joe opened it slowly. Inside was a simple letter on embossed paper, a partnership offer. Richard's company wanted to supply Joe's garage with tools and parts at no cost for a year. A lifeline. Joe's eyes flickered with disbelief. I don't know what to say." "Say you'll keep helping people," Richard said, smiling faintly. "You remind me what's still good in this world." Months passed. Business improved. With new supplies and better tools, Joe's garage started seeing new customers. The old blues radio still played, but now it sounded like hope instead of habit. Every so often, Joe would get a handwritten note from the Cole family, a photo of the kids smiling beside their repaired Cadillac, or a card that simply said, "Thank you for that night." And sometimes, late in the quiet of evening, Joe would stand outside the shop and think about how close he'd come to losing everything, and how a simple act of kindness, one he almost couldn't afford, had changed everything anyway. He didn't get rich. He didn't move to a bigger shop or buy a fancy car. But something inside him healed, the part that had started to believe that good men finish last. He'd learned that sometimes the world does see the small kindnesses, the quiet sacrifices. Sometimes they come back around, not with cash, but with meaning. One rainy night, nearly a year later, Joe closed the garage early. He flipped off the lights, grabbed his old denim jacket, and stepped outside. Across the street, he noticed a young couple standing by their stalled car, looking helpless in the downpour. He smiled to himself, walked over, and said, "Pop the hood." It was the same rain, the same road, maybe even the same kind of night. And as the rain soaked through his jacket and the couple thanked him again and again, Joe felt something deep and familiar stir in his chest. The quiet certainty that kindness never goes to waste. It might take days, it might take years, but it always finds its way home. Moral: kindness is never lost. It may disappear into the rain, the night, or the silence of forgotten roads. But one day it returns, carrying the warmth of every heart it once touched. If you believe kindness still matters in this world, don't forget to subscribe to The Voiceless, where every story reminds us that the smallest acts can echo the loudest.